Hi, welcome to Cycling Inform's weekly cycling tips. In this installment, we're going to be covering off how to check your chain to see if it needs replacing, how to get better at attacking on hills, and how to get your fitness back after 20 years off the bike. But first, I really want to thank everybody for submitting their questions for these tips. It's always exciting to get new questions coming in all the time from people, so thank you very much for that. And please do like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We also have a weekly newsletter where these tips go out every week, so definitely when you've got the opportunity to subscribe to that as well. Now, Francis has asked the question, how do you check your chain to see if it needs replacing? Now, I've been using a chain wear tool for years. Now, this particular one, it's called ProLink. This is a ProLink one. It's a very simple tool. Now, how it works is that you just insert this against the links within your chain, and then you just let the chain drop down into your chain on the other side of it. And there's a scale here from 50 to 100. And the idea is that you'll see as your chain wears, this will drop further and further down into the chain, indicating its wear. It's a very simple tool. Now, between 50 and 75% is where you would normally replace your chain. So that gives you a good indicator. And what I do is that when I clean my bike every couple of weeks, I just drop this tool into the chain to check to see the chain wear. And if it starts showing signs of wear, then I replace the chain. Now, it's important to remember that your chain and your cassette work together, and they wear together as well. So the general rule of thumb is that you want to get 4 or 3 chains to a cassette. Now, you can only do that if you replace your chain regularly before it starts wearing a worn pattern in your cassette. Now, if you leave your chain on too long and it starts wearing that worn pattern in your cassette, what will happen is that when you go to replace your chain, because the new chain will be running against that worn pattern, the chain won't mesh properly and it'll skip. And sometimes you see people out there on bikes, and when they start loading up the bike, perhaps when they're climbing hills or sprinting or accelerating away from lights, you'll feel the chain will slip against the cassette. And that's a dead giveaway that your cassette's too far worn against your chain to be able to ride properly, and you'll need to replace both. Now, of course, replacing both together is expensive, so the recommendation is that you replace your chain regularly and not get that worn pattern. And like I say, you'll get usually 3 to 4 chains per cassette. Now, the time that it takes for your chain and your cassette to wear out are dependent on a few things. The most important thing is how clean your chain is. If you've got a dirty chain that's got a lot of grit on it, then that's going to wear out your cassette and your chain a lot more quickly than if you keep it quite clean. So regular cleaning of your chain will help ensure that you get the best life out of both of those components. Now, the other thing that influences chain wear is the weight of the rider and the amount of power that they're putting into the bike. Now, the heavier the rider and the more power they put into the bike, the shorter the lifespan of the chain. So just recapping, the 2 important things to remember is just to replace your chain regularly and keep it clean, and that will enable you to get the most out of your chain and cassette. So the next question is by Donna, and she's asked, how do you get better at attacking on hills? Now, attacking on hills requires you to develop quite a huge amount of power over a short period of time. Now, there's 2 ways that I address this issue. The first thing is that we work on developing strength within the athlete off the bike. And this is really important. If you're able to develop that strength off the bike, then you'll be able to transmit that onto the bike and develop more power that you require to be able to do big, huge attacks on the hills. So that's the first key thing, is to develop that power off the bike. Now, the second most important thing is to start working on training yourself to develop that power on the bike. So what I do is I get my athletes to work on developing this power on the bike by doing hill sprints or doing big accelerations on hills. Now, you can also do this on the flat, but it's best to do it on the hill. And how we do this is through hill repeats. Now, what we do is we find a hill in the local area that the athlete lives. It doesn't have to be a very long hill. It can just be a hill around about 250 to 750 meters. Now, these attacks are done at maximum intensity. And you also want to give yourself plenty of time in between the efforts to recover. And we generally work on somewhere between 5 and 10 efforts during a session. But the important key thing to remember is that as soon as your speed or your power drops off by around about 20%, then you really have to call it quits and come back and do those efforts another day. Now the idea is that you build up these efforts over time to around about 5 or 10, and you want to vary the gradient of these efforts as well. So you may want to look at a 3% gradient and perhaps a 7% gradient, and then throw in a few 12% if you've got that in your local area as well. Now the last question that we have is from Alistair, and he's asked the question, how do you get your fitness back after 20 years off the bike? Now the great thing about cycling is that you develop this huge base or depth as you ride your bike, and this is really great when you get back into riding after 20 years. Now it does take a little bit of time to get back into the groove, but you'll find that the speed in which it takes you to get back on top of cycling is a lot quicker than if you were starting from scratch. Now some of this has got to do with the base that you've developed in your previous years as a cyclist, but also the technique of riding the bike and the bike handling and getting around corners and sitting in bunches, and all those skills that you've previously developed, you can obviously tap into very quickly because you've already had that experience from 20 years ago. So just like with any other training program, you just want to progressively build your cycling fitness over time. You see, there's no real shortcuts to this. You've got to get out on your bike and actually ride it. Now we've got an aerobic base building package that's specifically designed to help you do this. And it's also fantastic for people that are just starting out on the bike as well. Now we've got an aerobic base building package that's specifically designed to help you do this. And it's also fantastic for people that are just starting out on the bike as well. Now in it, it covers off the progression between the aerobic base building, the strength building, and the speed building. So it develops you really good aerobic base. Then we work on building strength through our Matt Brindle functional strength training exercises, and then we build on speed using our interval sessions done on the indoor trainer, and that's all packaged up with a program with all the video material all ready to go for you to just step straight into it. So thanks very much. I hope you've enjoyed these cycling tips. Now I really enjoy producing these every week, and I really enjoy getting feedback from you about how you're progressing with your riding and answering all your questions. So remember, I'm here to help you ride better. So if you do have any cycling questions, you can either respond to this email or use our Contact Us form on our website. Now thanks again. My name's David Heatley from Cycling Informed.